Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tools and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I have guest Jason Zook. Jason is a licensed attorney, intuitive psychic medium, near-death experiencer, host of the podcast, The Social Psychic Radio Show, and co-host with his best friend, Megan Kane, of the podcast Psychic Visions. Jason has been providing accurate, intuitive guidance within many different social contexts since 2004. And in 2017, Jason decided to offer his psychic services professionally to provide his clients with more clarity and guidance in their lives. Welcome, Jason. I am really thrilled to have you on the show today.
Tanya, thank you so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure. I loved your intro just now. Thank you so much for those positive words in the intro.
Thank you. Absolutely. So today you and I are going to talk about accessing your unique intuitive abilities and learning how to follow your internal guidance system. So Jason, let's first start off briefly with your story. When did you first learn that you were psychic and intuitive?
Beautiful question. My grandfather passed away in 2004. And when he died, I had a premonition 7 years beforehand that when my grandfather passes away, I'll be by myself with no one to console me. It was just a gut feeling I had. And when he actually died, he had a stroke, and I got to see him the day before he passed away. But what happened was he already was non-communicative except for his hands. I could talk to me by holding my hands a certain way, as I'm showing on the video here. And then what happened was I had to go back to Tampa, and then I wound up going to Wisconsin to cover a deposition. So the actual time he died, I was at a hotel room in Wisconsin, Baraboo, Wisconsin, and I was with no one to console me. But what I didn't realize is he was the one who was going to console me. Oh. In other words, I had orbs of light come into my hotel room after my mom announced that he died on the phone. And instead of me crying, this is the man who raised me, because I come from a single parent family. So he is my father, basically, even though, so long story short, when he passed, he said to me, son, I love you. Go get something to eat, and don't ever worry about me. Don't ever cry about me. You're always going to feel me around you. And he was so accurate with that.
Oh my gosh, I feel like he's here. I'm getting goosebumps right now, and the back of my head is getting tingly.
I am too, actually, right here. You can't see it as well on the hair on my arms, but they're all standing up right now.
He's like, y'all are talking about me.
Yeah. So then that night I went to go get food, and I went to a Panera Bread. And during the time I was eating, my friend Tracy called me, and she said, hey, friend from high school, how's your grandfather? Is he okay? I said, oh, he just died. She goes, oh, well, where are you? I said, I'm in Wisconsin. She goes, what about your premonition? I go, what do you mean? She said, you always had this premonition that you'd be by yourself and no one to console you. I go, well, he came to console me. Like, that was the missing part of the premonition I didn't understand. And for the first time, as I was talking to her, I sensed something that doesn't derive from our five senses. I started sensing that she was skeptical. And this is a best friend of mine for many years. We knew each other maybe 20 years, 15 years at that point. So I was like, Tracy, if you're skeptical, she goes, I am a bit, I hate to tell you, but I said, what if your grandmother came through? What if she had something specific to say to you? And I just blurted that out without even knowing what I was saying. And all of a sudden I delivered a message from her grandmother to her. And it was so poignant that she dropped the phone. And her future husband, I was like, hello? Is this a drop call? I'm in Wisconsin. No, she dropped the phone to go in the bathroom, started crying because she couldn't believe her grandmother was coming through the way she did. And when she grabbed the phone back after her future husband said, what did you say to Tracy? She's like, how did you know that? And no one but my grandmother and I know that. And I was like, I don't know. And I was as much asking questions as she was. So then I left, went back to the hotel room, and for 10 years, I slept with the lights on.
Yeah.
I didn't understand.
Totally agree with that. I did the same because I worked with death and loss at the hospital, and they were communicating with me in that way. And so I would sleep with the lights on because I was like, I just don't want to see an apparition at the end of my bed with the lights off.
Well, when I would sleep, and I'll share this with you, my arm would go up in the air in the middle of sleep, or I'd get pushed, or there were various weird things. And if I left the lights on, I at least felt more at ease. And even now, till this day, I still lock my bedroom door at night, because what I do is I create like a loving bubble cocoon that fills the room kind of thing. And it leaves me in good sleep. But if someone opens up that door while I'm in rest, I get woken up like within an hour or so. It's just weird how that works.
So when you receive those intuitive downloads or that information, are you hearing it, seeing it, feeling it, or all the above? It's all coming.
All the above, and then some.
Ooh, because I shut down the seeing part when I worked in the hospital because I was seeing a lot and it scared me. So I literally wrote down on a piece of paper, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this. I don't want to see that. And I put it in a drawer. And then what happened, Jason, is my other abilities got stronger. It was like,
I love
like
hearing
Helen
this.
Keller. I was like,
I love this,
when
by
you
the way.
can't see or you can't hear, everything else gets stronger. And that's exactly what happened. Mm-hmm.
But you can understand firsthand what I'm describing because you've had it yourself and you
Yes.
know what that spiritual awakening can be like. And then it's our way of reacting to it, making sense of it. It's like you see a movie and you're like, what did I just see?
Yeah. And so when you were receiving these premonitions, were they coming in the form of dreams or how were they coming to you?
I get them on all levels now. As I've advanced in the last several years of doing readings on the side, like outside of being a lawyer, I'll do readings and I've done them more proficiently. That it's just like maybe we have 5 physical senses, but maybe we have another 10 psychic senses, clairaudience, clairsentience, all that fun stuff, dreams, prophetic dreams, like being able to have near-death experiences opens you up. What I tell people, I just am very sensitive to energies. I know I can read someone's energy and tell them the future, past, present, past lives, deceased loved ones, all that kind of stuff. It's just all in a big ball of yarn.
You got to unravel it.
Psychic yarn.
So, Jason, let's talk about visitation dreams and what can we learn from them? Because I've had them not from my recently passed grandmother, but my grandmother who passed when I was a child. And oh my goodness, the clarity that came through that dream. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Wow. Can I give you a most recent example? And
yes.
It's not my grandfather, it's my dad, who I had no relationship with. My dad, just for our audience purposes, was an alcoholic and I love him. He was an alcoholic and he was a drug addict and he died 10 years ago. And we never had a relationship while he was alive because the barriers just were too great, that he came to me during the pandemic in a series of dreams. And I always dismissed him. And then finally, I reconnected with my aunt. She's his sister. She died last year, unfortunately. But when she was still alive and we were talking for a few years, I had a dream with my dad. And he came to me in a dream. He said, ask your aunt about my debit card or credit card in the wallet that she has. And he gave me the last 4 numbers of it. Like, when you buy something, you're like 6281.
Yeah.
He gave me the numbers and I woke up from the dream and I called her and I was like, hey, do you have anything my dad's after his passing? And she's like, I don't know. Why? I said, because he's giving me these 4 numbers telling me that you may have a credit card of his or debit card. And she called me back and confirmed that was the 4 numbers that he left in the wallet that she had. And so that was like a direct, when you put the code into your phone and you unlock your phone, that showed me that he obviously wanted to communicate with me. He kept asking me for forgiveness. So then he came to me in another dream and I said, Dad, I forgive you. And once I said those words, it was like, I tell people that letting go and forgiving is a superpower, because my entire life I had this boogeyman, which is called my father, who I always wanted to have a relationship with, but I just was never able to. And then in his death, it's ironic that we have this relationship, because it kind of got to the point now where he brought up the fact that I only have 1 photo of him with me and my brother and my mom. And that's from when my brother had his communion and he was 5, he was 8 and I was 3. So it tells you many moons ago in the late 70s, early 80s, late 70s. And what happened was I printed that picture out, put it in a frame, and I see it all the time. So fast forward to Thanksgiving of this year, last week, my mom and I are driving to go to a dinner at a friend's house for Thanksgiving. We have a half-hour drive. My mom's also psychic, but she only discovered that 3 years ago, being around me.
Yeah,
so
usually our parents are, if we are,
oh, yeah.
or one of the parents.
So my mom says to me, oh, your dad's been coming to me a lot in dreams recently. I don't understand it. And I was like, really? What's he doing? He's asking me for forgiveness. I never told her about my experience, right? So we compare notes and I tell her, and then the next word out of her mouth is, do you know that picture we have from communion, your brother's communion, the one of you and me and your dad and your brother? I'm like, yeah, from when I was 3 years old. Can you print that out and get it in a frame for me? And I want to send one to your brother. He wants your brother to have one. And I'm like, the same picture we're talking about, all this is coming from dream sequences.
Your dad's been busy in the dream state.
And I've never told her anything because, my dad's a topic you don't bring up to my mom because she went through a lot with domestic violence and stuff when I was an infant. So it's ironic that, the synchronicity of you asking about dreams versus that was confirmed a few days ago. It even being psychic, and you may be able to verify this, even though we're intuitive and you call ourselves intuitive psychics, when these things happen, even for us, sometimes it knocks me off my feet.
I totally agree.
Like,
yes. And it's funny you
So-
say that with the number sequences, because my grandmother gave me her phone, her iPhone, and I was trying to get into it because there's information in there, but she has a password on it. And so I've been every night before I go to sleep, I'm like, all right, Grandma, seriously, come to me in my dream. Tell me what your passcode is. I'm getting to the point that I'm not sure she even knew what her passcode was. She was 91, but
Wow.
so it's
Could
funny
be
you brought
someone's
that up.
birthday, some important date in her life. I feel like she's telling me to tell you, check the dates in her life and go through them again.
Okay,
You
I'll
might
go
be a
through them
digit
again.
off. You might
I
be a
think what
digit off.
happened is she had a date in her life and then she put it on there wrong, is what I'm
I
getting.
think it's off by a digit is what I'm being told. Whatever
That's-
combination of numbers you're off by. I know that could be the difference between 1 and a million, basically, but it's a digit.
I'll give it a run again. But okay, Jason, so you have been an attorney. You're an attorney in several different states. And then boom, you have this experience with your grandfather. And now you're like, oh my gosh, I can communicate with people outside of the physical realm. So how did you come out of the psychic closet, so to speak? Because I love to ask this question because I mean, I know how I came out and it was definitely a roller coaster ride, but how have you navigated that?
It
Are
was
you
a
still
journey, right?
navigating it?
No, I mean it's a journey in the sense that I started with that experience on August 12th, 2004. That's the date my grandfather died. I live, by the way, synchronicity. I live at the address of 812, which I for 10 years didn't realize that was connected like that. And it took me till 2016 to finally accept, to be open about it, when I met one of my best friends, Megan, at a wedding. And she has her own metaphysical store called Royal Susie here in Tampa. And I met her at the wedding. She had heard me on a podcast a couple of years earlier from one of our mutual college contacts who had her own show. And so she knew about me, but I wish I knew about her earlier, but I didn't. And we met at a wedding and we're seated next to each other. And she says to me, I know about you and we're going to be really close and we're going to do some amazing things together. And I was like, whoa, that's a little intense. But she was right, because she's also psychic. That's the one I'm doing the show with, Megan Kane, with the podcast, the Psychic Vision stuff, Electrocast Media we're about to release. And like, she just showed me that, you know what, I always had this thing where I was stuck. Well, I'm a lawyer. And, the lawyer is the accepted role in society. I spent all these hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to law school, student loan debt. In my mind, I justified that as trumping anything else. Like I might be a psychic, but psychics are out there and I'm a lawyer and I'm here. Like I kind of did that for a long time. And then I meet her and I'm like, I meet Megan, I'm like, wait a minute. I could be a lawyer and I could be an open psychic. Why is there anyone saying I'm limited? So I went from limited thinking to a growth mindset, basically. Yeah. And so she said, and it was easy when she said to me, hey, if you do want to give readings, why don't you come over to my shop and I'll line you up next weekend. That's like months later. I'll line you up next weekend with clients of hers that want readings with me. And I literally showed up and there were 10 people waiting for me over 2 days. And that was a crash course. And then I went on to Groupon. And so the way I always justify it is people ask me, how do you do psychic and lawyering and all this stuff? And I say, like, it's 2 different hats.
You're going to say it's 2 different hemispheres of the brain, really, because you're using, the analytical side and the lawyer, but now you're using an intuitive side, with your psychic abilities.
and so the way I justify it, and I know I was talking to you before we started, that today is the day I'm starting my first legal job. It starts slow today. Like we're getting acclimated after the weekend. But my point is, I went from being a lawyer to then becoming a psychic and doing that after hours. I've always kept them completely different because none of the ethics rules, like in your profession, there's nothing you could look up and say, well, what are the duties of a psychic lawyer to his client? There's no such thing, right? So I interpret that rather plainly to say, well, if there's nothing in the rules that mention it, then that means I have to keep the 2, like the Berlin Wall during the Cold War. East and West Berlin, psychic lawyer, 2 separate realms, big fence in the middle. And that's how I've kept it. So even now, as I go back into a lawyer, like full-time legal job, with another entity, another firm, I am reserving only Saturdays now to do readings from like 11 to 2. So I'm cutting back on the psychic readings right now so that I can focus exclusively on my law career. And so for me, that's kind of like how I'm not giving it up. I'm just switching it up to do what I need. Because like you said, it's a 2 hemispheres of the brain kind of thing. I know that in order for me to focus on my law career, I can't be doing psychic readings during business hours. So I'll do it a couple hours a week and go into full steam on my lawyer hat for a few years or months or whatever it is. But
yeah, I know it was tough for me too when I worked in healthcare because I was picking up intuitively on ailments and issues with people that the doctors were not diagnosing them with, because I was picking up on emotions and energy and all this other stuff that was
The real
not
stuff.
physical. Yeah, it was the
Yeah.
root cause of things. And so I had to get to a point where I had to step away from that, because I was struggling with just having this deep knowing of what the issue was to what was being told, to the patient or to the client or whatnot. So
I admire you, by the way, that you were healthcare and that you're also that's such a beautiful combination for helping people.
Yeah. And I think it's needed in all areas, even as an attorney. I mean, your intuitive gifts are going to give you leverage or a one up in certain areas.
I don't do that. I don't do that. I keep myself an even playing field with all other lawyers, because you know how lawyers are? If they think you have a leg up on somebody because of some special ability, that, I mean, it wouldn't work for me. So I keep it simple. And I've learned that I don't use this stuff for personal gain. Trust me, I make enough mistakes in my life and personal life stuff that if I was like using it all the time, I probably wouldn't make some of the mistakes I make, whatever that might be. But when it comes to my professional life, I find that I really, in my mind, simplify. I like to simplify things. When people ask me, oh my God, you're psychic, how do you do it? And I go, I read energy. Everybody can do it. And then when it comes to being a lawyer and being a psychic, yeah, are there days that I do lawyering things and then I'll do a psychic thing in the evening and maybe throw a podcast in there in the past? Sure. But it makes you dizzy.
No, you're right. It's almost like you're in different realms. It's like, you're attorney, you're in the third dimension. And then when you're psychic, you're in the higher frequencies. And, I think that was hard for me. I call myself a realm bridger because I feel like I'm constantly kind of bouncing around these different frequencies of energy. And you've got to find your own balance as to where you can do that. And I think by you separating them, it's like, and I got to a point where I just couldn't do it anymore. It was like, oh my gosh, like my mind couldn't do it. So I'll be curious to see in a few years down the road if you're still able to separate them.
I will see as well. I will tell you that this is the first legal job that I'm excited about. I haven't been excited about something like this in like 10 years. And so it's because I'm helping hurricane victims. And that's what I was going to tell you. For my psychic stuff, I have realized, and you might know this, it's not about us, right? It's not about the ego. It's not about, oh, what are people going to think of me? Or, oh, am I this gift? No, it's about helping people. The universe showed me that rather strongly. Every time I try to edge away from being intuitive, or I'm the kind of person that if I'm around somebody who needs it, I have to share. I can't hold in something if I know someone's going to gain from it and heal. And so I learned over the years that if you can use it in a way where you offer clarity and reassurance and comfort and helping someone feel less anxious about their lives or about their situation. So many times people tell me, I feel like a whole weight has been lifted off my shoulders from talking to you. And I laugh and I say, well, me too, because it's a reciprocal thing. I'm sure you can say this.
Yeah.
When I give good readings, and I mean, all my readings I connect most of the time with people really well. It's like kind of like it's definitely a validation. And I have found there's synchronicities even in the readings I give. For example, a couple of years ago, I had cancer. And as I was going through the 3 months of having to go through, planning the surgery, MRIs, and all the mental gymnastics you go through when you have a cancer, kidney cancer, stage 1. It was like I had to go through that process. And then ultimately, I realized I started giving people readings who were coming to me for cancer questions. Oh, my mom died of cancer and I had a bad scan. What do how should I deal with this? Or I'm real depressed because, my husband died from cancer and I never had a chance to talk to him. And then all of a sudden I'm coming up with things about cancer for these people, like positive, reassuring things like it's okay, you're going to be fine, your husband loves you, or you're going to be, I'm giving different examples of different people. But it taught me, like I learn from people sometimes when I read them, because the stuff I read them about, if it's a failed relationship, monetary issues, career advice, all the stuff I do, I always see the gleam for myself too, from the advice I give to others.
Yeah, it's funny, Jason. I agree with that because I do EFT tapping and quantum healing hypnosis sessions, and I could be struggling with something in my life, and somehow I attract a client who's struggling with it too, and then I get information through their session. It's almost like we're mirrors of one another, and it's reflecting back at me.
I love that you get it. You get exactly what I'm describing. Not a lot of psychics really talk about that. Have you noticed that? A lot of them don't talk about how they gain from when they give readings to people, where it gives you meaning and purpose, but it also can reassure you in so many ways. And it ups your energetic, like it makes me feel better when I do these kind of things. Talking to you right now, I feel better. And then when I give a reading to somebody, and if they, they'll write me back and be like, "Oh my God, what you told me just happened." I'll be like, I don't remember everything I say because I channel it.
Yeah.
So, it makes it fun.
So you predicted your cancer, correct?
Yes, I self-diagnosed myself 6 months before, or actually March of 2018. I was walking downstairs from my office space, and there's a mirror with a dry cleaner underneath my office space, and I was looking at that time of day, and it looked like a reflection. I was admiring my shirt. Is it wrinkled? No, I look good there. And then I'm like, oh, good, clean shaven there. Okay. And all of a sudden, as I'm looking at my body, like in the reflection, it was, wouldn't it be weird if you had cancer and didn't know it? And I was like, cancel out, law of attraction. We're not talking that way.
You're like, not my reality.
It repeated 2 more times. And I was like, okay, what am I doing here? You telling me I got cancer and I don't know it? So then I walked upstairs. I'm like, I was just told I have cancer and I don't know it. And my coworkers were like, what are you talking about? And then I told my mom and I told other people, like, you don't have cancer. No. And then 4 months later, I go for a CAT scan to prepare for my diverticulitis surgery, which I was supposed to have because I suffered from that chronically for 15 years.
Yeah.
And the doctor comes back with the CAT scan and says, listen, we got to move your surgery a little bit. I go, what? And he goes, you have stage 1 kidney cancer. I was like, I do? Okay. And he was like, you're not shocked? I go, well, 4 months ago, my spirit guides told me I had cancer. So I guess I mentally prepared for it. And then I went into this, I had a cryoblast done a few months later. MRI confirmed it was stage 1. Cancer is not something you play with. I actually had a false alarm this past September, October. I went in for a kidney stone that I didn't know I had at DR. And then they sent me with my paperwork, like from the scan, and they told me, oh, you're fine. And I sent it to my doctor. He's like, there's something growing in the same exact spot as last time. But you got to wait a month to get the MRI because that's how backed up everybody is in Tampa. And that was also
especially hurricane after hurricane.
Well, and that was also the same time the Hurricane was it Ian? Ian was coming into the Gulf and all that stress. I had to evacuate. So there's a lot going on in that little time frame, and it was like what I call a mini dark night of the soul. Mm-hmm. And and then they call, and then the day before my birthday, I finally got the scan. So I had to wait another 4 days. So everything was overshadowed by that for like 2 months of this year. Oh, wow. And it reminded me of scanxiety, they call it. There's actually a term. If you Google scanxiety with the American Cancer Association, they'll talk about exactly the experience I'm describing, where you think you're 4 years cancer-free and all of a sudden your world is taking a sharp turn and you're reliving all the emotional aspects originally of that diagnosis again in your mind, where you're isolated, you think you're in between 2 worlds, living and dead, you're concerned about the future, but yet not really knowing what to expect, and it puts everything upside down.
Wow, almost like PTSD.
Yeah, I think so. And it really shook me. I became somewhat reclusive, and I was very depressed. And I realized like it actually took somebody calling me through my psychic stuff. I had this amazing woman, her name's Cindy, and she contacted me, and she's stage 4 breast cancer survivor. And she wanted me to just talk to her about synchronicity. I never would charge her, of course. We had a long conversation. I'm like, you need to come on my show because I want you to talk to me about how you survived your stage 4 cancer and what it was like for you. Like, because I admire her so much. She's like my personal hero. And like anyone who goes through this stuff, I admire them as well. That's just how I feel about it.
Yeah. And cancer is no joke. So did they completely remove your kidney?
No, I had a cryoblast.
Oh,
okay. Which was where they stick a needle into, you have surgery, they stick these long needles, 4 of them, I believe. And like if you have something on your finger, like a wart or something, they could freeze it off. You ever see when they freeze it off? That's a simplistic way of saying a cryoblast, but a larger scale. They have the technology. It's been around 30 years. They had the technology where they knock me out for 4 hours, and they do this intricate procedure where they freeze the tumor a couple times, and it falls off in the body and then dies. And then I went back a month later. I had the procedure done on September 26th of 2018. So that's a special date for me. And then a month later, I found out that I was cancer-free. And I was just like, the emotional baggage you deal with, like I held it in. I tried to be all strong to everybody in my life because I felt like I had to be. And then once I found out I didn't have cancer anymore, that all like left me, and I became super emotional and cried for like a catharsis.
Yeah, completely. And that's what I was immediately thinking, because I work with emotions in the body, and the emotion that is in the kidneys is fear. So it makes me wonder if you were transmuting fear of the people in the area. Being intuitives, this happens to me often. I'll go to the store and I'm fine. And then I'm in line behind someone and I have a pain in my side. And I'm like, that is not mine. This is the woman in front of me, and sometimes I've had conversations with people and sometimes I haven't, but oftentimes I'll send it back. I'll just be like, that's not my energy. I'm just intuitively picking up on it. So it makes me wonder if maybe your cancer was that part of that awakening, that you have those medical intuitive abilities as well.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because the same friend I'm talking about, Tracy, she called me once during college to tell me that she had a false positive. She had a scare and she's freaking out. And I'm like, it's a false positive, without me knowing. I wasn't psychic at that time. Mm-hmm. And I was driving. I was like, it's just a false positive. You'll find that out shortly. And what I saw, my clairvoyance popped in, and I saw, like, like when you see an egg scrambled. Yeah. This is your brain on drugs. Those old commercials. I literally saw these cells doing this in my head, and my clairvoyance told me it's not cancerous. You're benign. You're okay. And then 2 weeks later, she came back and said, I am benign. You're right. Wow. And I mean, that kind of stuff. I don't ever advertise myself as a medical intuitive, because there's, as psychics, my disclaimer is I'm a lawyer and I entertain people as a psychic, and that's all this is for. And if you get healing out of that entertainment, you laugh a little bit, you feel better about yourself, your situation or context or whatever, then I feel like I've done my job.
Yeah. And however it comes through, it comes through. I mean, sometimes it'll come through that clairvoyance. Sometimes it comes through me and my clairsentience. I physically feel the person's pain. And for years when I worked in healthcare, I didn't realize I was feeling every single person's pain in every hospital I was visiting, and carrying that home every single day as my own, until I realized, it was just my intuition picking up on the people's pain. It's not my pain. And so, Jason, in your opinion, do you think there's a difference between the way that men and women both utilize their intuitive abilities? Have you recognized that at all?
That's a great question. From my vantage point, I think that has to do with the person's comfort level, right? Because you could be a male and be very in touch with your emotions and feelings. And I consider myself pretty in touch with my emotions and feelings. After surviving cancer, I'm pretty damn in tune.
Yeah.
Like friends and family, I always tell them I love them or whatever it is. But I think, men are more reserved usually, but that doesn't mean they're not the same intuitives as women. I think women are more expressive and men are more laid back, and not laid back, but more, they kind of put up a wall, and they have to have this masculinity thing. They've got to be all put to strong strength, right? Strength comes from stoicism. And so if you're a psychic and you're stoic, well, you're not really relaying to people. And so you may think, people may think, oh, well, women are more open, they're more intuitive. It's not that they're open and more intuitive, it's that they're more expressive about it. So think about it. If I wasn't talking about this stuff, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now, right? If I was keeping it to myself. And like my mom, she kept it to herself for 73 years. And then we get on an airplane and she asked me to read the person between us. And I read the person in the air, and she picked up on everything I did before, and then that made her realize. So now she throws up a bunch of premonitions all the time.
That's so cool. And I think there's a lot of people who will be watching this episode today too, of you and I sharing our, unique stories and our abilities. And they could be too sitting there saying, I've never shared this with anyone. I mean, Jason, when I worked in healthcare, I was talking to the dead, getting information from them. I was seeing things, mists, shadow beings, whatnot. I didn't share it with a soul. But I think that's probably why I was feeling so much pain too, is because I was literally a pressure cooker. I was bottling up all of this, stuff that I was sensing, like you said, with all of our other senses, abilities. And I was bottling it up, and it was causing me so much, all of this energy built up in my body. And then finally I got to a point where I had to release it. And I opened up to one of my friends, and she had said, I see that stuff too. And I'm like, you do, so it was just nice to have a friend that I could talk to about it.
When you say that, I think the line, I see dead people.
I know. I always feel that way. And it was like, I see dead people. I feel dead people. I
hear them. I talk to them in my sleep.
We're visiting. Literally, I worked in organ donation. So they were literally visiting me with messages to share with their family members in dream state and, through those visualizations. And so
your grandmother was psychic, right? I feel like grandmother.
Yeah, but she was also very shut off to that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, it's like now that she's crossed over, she is there more than anybody is there. I mean, she's like, oh, Tanya, I know that you can tune into my frequencies, so I know that you'll understand what I'm trying to get through to you. And so, Jason, what is advice that you can give to those who are working on or developing their intuitive abilities, or who might be in that psychic closet like we were, that are a little afraid to peek their head out?
Take your time. Take your time. It took me a decade or longer, 12 years. Do it when you're ready. It's like any classic coming out to yourself kind of thing, where you're comfortable as like a musician or an artist or a psychic. I would just say whatever talents you have within you, be kind to yourself. Embrace what you find fits within your life at this time and this time frame. And life changes as we get older. Our lives, the priorities, everything changes and shifts. And so for me, I'm not the same person I was in 2004 when my grandfather died. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the screw people who aren't going to want me to be a psychic. That's not my business. It's their business. That's their issue. Now, when someone calls me now and says, I'm a skeptic, like wants a reading, I'm a skeptic, read for me. And I feel like I'm on Zoom call. They're like this.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't have the time.
So closed off.
I don't have the time to take a test right now. If you want me to work with you, you have to open yourself up. If you're not comfortable, I don't mind skeptics, but that was earlier in my life. Like right now, where I am now, I find more value of people who want me to work with them than somebody who's like,
I need proof.
Yeah, read me. I'm skeptical. Well, you know what? I say to them, I was skeptical too for about a 12-year period of time. Even with my own abilities, I was skeptical that this is, something that I had to really work through. And so anyone who's going through like doubt, you feel isolated, start surrounding yourself with people that might be more open-minded and accepting of your situation. Like I got lucky that I had Megan come into my life, and she and I just connected on such a deep level that it helped me having that person to be a sounding board to really be able to learn what it is that's within myself, right? So if you can find someone that can mentor you, work with you, or, just overthink things, just look at everything from the perspective that you're evolving. We're all evolving. We're all spiritual, right? And so every single person listening to this right now can do what we do, I feel, to different degrees. Some of us are more in tune than others, but I think it's all about, like, I give people the analogy that people come to me and say, I can't meditate, it's impossible for me to clear my mind. And I'm saying, you're giving yourself a disservice. You really are.
You're limiting yourself.
You're limiting yourself with these limiting beliefs. And I use the analogy, have you ever tried to go stargazing in the middle of Manhattan? There's too much light pollution. You're not going to see much. But if you go out to the country or the mountains and you get a chance to go look up at the stars, you're going to see a cosmos that you've never seen before. And I use that as a quick analogy to say to somebody, if you really want to learn to meditate, you got to learn to quiet your mind, still the thoughts, deep breathing, reflection. And I tell people, try guided meditations. Go on YouTube, go on your phone on YouTube.
That's a good training wheels.
Right? And just practice. But over time, meditation to me and prayer and reflection, that's how we connect. And if you remove the thought pollution, like light pollution, then you can connect better.
I love that analogy. And that's, people are like, well, I don't know if it's my intuition or something else. And that's why I say, learn to listen to your internal guidance system. It's like your GPS system. It's guiding you, and go based off of how it feels. Like oftentimes, when I get that intuitive nudge, it's not this, I've had it where it's been strong, like listen, but I've also had it very soft and calming, but my body feels a sense of calmness and peace and clarity around it versus, a more impure thought or negative thought that comes through. I can kind of learn to distinguish it. And I think that's where the solitude comes into play. When we first are, in the psychic closet, we're alone and we're learning how to kind of discern, right? Discern what is our intuition and what might be the thoughts of others that we're picking up, or just those thoughts that we need to cleanse, like you said, like the light pollution. And so it's really learning how to tune into that internal guidance system. And it's very subtle sometimes. And for me, I love the synchronicities, and I keep seeing 222 today. So I'm like, I wonder what's up with that, with the 222. I've seen it like 5 times today. And so I do, I love that. Yeah. I always tune into that oftentimes. And so what do you enjoy most about being an intuitive psychic, Jason?
Never a dull moment.
There's always somebody there. You're never alone.
I can go to an event, or like my friend just had a little house party the other night, and I told her as a joke, I said, if you want me as the informal entertainment, I'm glad to be. She's like, no. You be you tonight. Just don't read. Don't just do your thing. If you feel like you want to read somebody, fine. And I connected with these new people so well because I got to read for them, and they appreciated it. And I always tell everybody, it's never a dull moment when you're real intuitive and you're comfortable with yourself and you can express that, because even if you run into negative people, you can be comfortable enough in your own abilities to know that's not me, that's them. And so for me, I love that I can connect with someone on a deeper level than what we usually rely on for cues and communication, you know, our facial features or what we say to each other, how we say it, that's what normal people do. I get to delve a little deeper, and there might be people who are closed off, like someone who's autistic, for example, or somebody who
I love working with autistic kids.
Yeah. And I can tell you that I feel like that having this situation that we do in our own intuitive abilities, it enriches not only our lives, but it also helps us connect to people when it's under the right circumstances.
It does, especially those that may not be able to speak. You know, it's like, ooh, I can tune into my other abilities and senses and gather information. It's really just like a database, you know, it's like we're just kind of pulling that information. And so we have a little bit of time left, Jason, and I want to talk a little briefly about your near-death experience. I had a near-death experience myself about 1.5 years ago, and I'm recognizing that our awakening and finding our intuitive abilities sometimes correlates with near-death experiences. So tell us a little bit about yours.
Yeah, mine was under anesthesia, actually. So I wasn't clinically, dead. My heart didn't stop. What happened was I was under the anesthesia and I was in a garden. I was getting a colonoscopy done after my cancer treatment before my second surgery. So I was in between those two surgeries that year. November is basically November of 2018. I even recorded an episode about it on my podcast through back then I used to do things through the phone. And I recorded a 20-minute episode recounting it because I knew it was so impactful for me positively. So the big thing here, backstory, my mom was praying every single night during the cancer situation, never told me that she prayed to my grandfather and to God and said, Dad, after she prayed to God, she goes, Dad, please reassure me somehow that I'm not going to have to bury Jason, that he's not going to die before me. I'll live a natural life. I'll die before him the way the order of things should be. That's my prayer. I want him to live a full life. I don't want this to be his undoing. So she never told me any of that. So I go in for my colonoscopy, and before I get put under, the nurse that's tending to me, I started reading her, and I was like, "Hey, your husband wants me to tell you that." I said the guy's name. I go, "He wants me to tell you stop arguing with your son." And she's like, "What? Stop arguing with your son about his graduation. He sees what you guys are going through, torturing yourselves with this whole thing coming up. He wants me to tell you he loves you and he's sorry for what he did." She goes,
she's like, "What?"
The eyes enlarged. And I'm about to get knocked out. And she's like going and walking over. She's
like, one last reading before I get knocked out.
Just in case, right? So it turns out her husband did pass, and she did have fights with her son that morning. And so then I get put under. And as I go from that to I'm in this beautiful garden that you can't even describe with the physical descriptive words we use. But all I'll say, the analogy is, if our best HD TV is 8,000 megapixels, this experience was through all my senses: vision, hearing, smelling, tasting, whatever. Spiritually, it was like 1,000,000 of that. Like, it was so pronounced. And all I felt like the emotional love, the unconditional love washed over me. And I was in this garden and I was communicating with relatives I never knew, and on my mom's side of the family, and they were mostly them there, but reassuring. And my grandfather gave back with a message, and he said, "Do me a favor. When you come out of there, I want you to call your mom, and I want you to tell her that you're not going to die before her. She's going to live a natural life. You're going to live a long life, and she's going to, she'll go before you." So I woke up out of the anesthesia, and I'm sitting there, and there's that nurse. she's like, "I'm not going to argue with him anymore. I'm not going to argue with him anymore." And I was like, okay, I just came back from this awesome garden. And then my friend Megan picked me up. Actually, I got in her car and I called my mom. First time I got a chance to, and I called she started crying. My mom's not emotional. So for her to cry, and then she said, "I'll call you back." I was like, "Uh-oh." She calls back. She says, "That was the prayer I said every day. I'd kneel on the side of the bed and I would say, Dad, please make sure he doesn't go before me. That would be a tragedy. Let me go first." And so that was just so profound that gave me a high for weeks after that.
And your mom too, I bet.
And her as well. Yeah. We just, I talked to my mom. Our normal conversations are, "Yeah, Mom, I think you're going to make it to 80. She's 76 on the 14th. And she's like, "I would like to make it to 80, and that'll be a good place to be." And she's 70. So we both were kind of planning 4 more years. and I'm gonna have her live with me, and she's declining a little and stuff. And it's like we know, we just know.
And I think too, once you tune into these abilities, we look at death a lot differently. I know I did. I know when I worked in the hospital, I was around death more than I was around the living, oftentimes. And so I just have a very different understanding that, it's just energy. Yes, we lose our physical body, but they're still with us, they're in soul and spirit. And so
we graduate.
Yeah, we graduate. Exactly. We ascend. We
get
lighter. And so in your experience, what happens after we die, Jason?
I love that question. I can give you a pretty simple, straightforward answer. It's like falling asleep on the couch while watching TV.
Oh, yeah.
All of us have done that at some point, right? Especially during the pandemic.
You're still kind of hearing the show, but you're out of it.
You're on that. Next time anyone does this, and trust me, after I talk about this, it'll happen to you at some point. Go lay on your bed, go lay on your couch, put on your favorite show at the end of a day, and just lay there and let your mind just drift off. And that's what it's like. It's like literally for people, the way my understanding of it is you have a guy, you have someone assigned to you as a loved one, like my grandfather or my mom. If they predecease me, when I switch over to the other side, we ascend, they are the ones that greet you. You have a greeter. Yeah. And the greeter orientates you like, hey, you're here now, and we're their reality show. So they look after us. And most of the time they come to us in dreams. That's where the veil between life and death is the most narrow, the thinnest. And they want to reassure us. They want to comfort us. They want to tell us. When I give readings to people, you might be able to vouch for this. I'll have people come in and tell me, somebody wants to talk to their dad that just died a year ago. And the dad will come in and say, let her know I'm watching her paint the walls. Let her know that I see her pacing the hallways. Let her know in the mornings, or that she gets in the car and cries and then she goes to work because she hates her job. And those kind of details get relayed to the person I'm reading with. And then the person's like quiet, usually emotional, crying as a catharsis. And then I know, I'm like, yeah, this is legit. I can do this with this person right now on the other side. Yeah. And I find most of the time when that happens, people heal from that. Like that reassurance, that clarity is something that it's like the best medicine.
It really is. And so in your opinion, how can we effectively communicate with our loved ones who have crossed over to another energy form?
Somebody who came, I can't remember if I interviewed on their show or they came on my show, and I love the analogy they give. For those of us over 40, I'll have to use that analogy. Or Nick at Night might change this though. I'm 47. Bewitched the show.
Yeah.
When Sam,
she goes like
who's the mate, yeah, or she goes, Mom, and all of a sudden her mom pops in there and then they start communicating. For the audience, that would be anytime one of the characters came in, she was a witch, and she had her relatives that would just pop in. They're all alive, but they would pop in when you called them by name. Uh-huh. I believe that I do that with my grandfather, and I do that with other relatives. So like, if I want to talk to my dad, I'll call him by name in my head, and then I like leave that space open for him. Or my grandfather is like, they ring a doorbell to me. I'll feel their energies, and they have an energetic signature. I know their vibrational energy or their healing. I just know the way they feel when they come to me, so I can sense them. And so for me, anyone practicing wanting to be connected with their loved ones, if you've never done any of this stuff before, first you need to learn how to meditate and do breath work. I take 3 deep breaths before I read people, and that grounds me. And the more healing modalities that you can learn in your life, if it's sound healing, meditation, eating healthier, intermittent fasting, if it's going out with friends, nature therapy, if it's whatever, be creative. Those things help a lot. And so from my vantage point, I would say embrace who you are. Like, don't be afraid. If you feel like you're getting intuitive nudges, respect them, honor them.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid of them. But
don't be afraid of them. Yes.
Don't because fear is such a powerful countervailing factor, right? I just tell people, don't be afraid, and know that you can call your dad, whoever passes. And the thing is, they're like a subtle Wi-Fi signal. So if you use that analogy, by meditating, you can pick up on that signal over time. Eventually, you'll get more comfortable with it. And the next thing you know, you're going to be having conversations with your loved ones. And then the synchronistic numbers, 222, 333, 444, or a feather shows up on the floor outside your door, or a pen.
Thousands of ladybugs. That's how my grandma showed up for me in the middle of September with no ladybugs. Yeah.
Whatever that is, there's a certain signature to that. It could be a song on the radio. It could be a TV show. It could be you going in a casino. And my grandmother used to love to gamble. And
mine too.
Anyone you see that looks like her might be a breadcrumb, as I call it, spiritual breadcrumb. They might come to us in our sleep and it may be disjointed. You may not understand why you just hear your grandfather's voice, but it doesn't make sense. I had my grandfather come to me in a dream the night of my birthday in 2008. He had been gone 5 years. My grandmother died the year before, so it's my first birthday by myself. And I'm in my condo now that I'm in. And at the time, I'd only been there a year, but I hadn't really unpacked yet. And so I had this like, oh, I wish I had the last birthday card they sent me. I wish I had the last birthday card they sent me from 5 years ago.
And you said it out loud?
And I said it out loud. I said it to myself. I got sad. I fell asleep. And then my grandfather comes to me in a dream. This is like 10 o'clock before my birthday. Son, happy birthday. I love you. Do me a favor. No matter what time it is, can you clean out your closet for me? So I wake up at 2 a.m. I look up at the ceiling. I go, Grandpa, thank you. Happy birthday received. Thank you. But why do I need to clean my closet? I felt him nudging me to go to the closet at 2 a.m. So I go into my large walk-in closet and I have all these boxes from when I still haven't unpacked because I travel for work at the time to Mississippi for, most of my time. So I start taking these boxes and throwing one over my shelf, other one over my shoulder. I get to the point where I get to this regular trunk locker with a padlock on it that I got at Walmart from college many moons before.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I had one of those too.
He got me to open it up and I reach into the top of it and guess what's there? That last card they sent me. It's from the dollar store because they were thrifty.
Yeah, well, they always
are
always thrifty.
Yeah, and it had 2 horses on the front of it. And I even got to the point where I took photos of it, screenshot, scanned it, and put it on my website and wrote a blog about it many moons ago because of how profound of a gift that was. That just showed me the direct correlation with visitation dreams and physical manifestation responsive to what I was wanting. And I got that. And I was like, that was the most amazing birthday card I ever got. They didn't have to pay postage for it. And it was so amazing to have that. It's just to talk about it from 08 till now is 14 years later. And I still feel like it just happened.
Yeah. And, and I see it too. When that happened with my grandmother with all the ladybugs, I had asked her to just show me one and she showed me thousands upon thousands.
Overachiever.
Swarming me. And for me, that was a very profound validation to know that we're communicating. She's listening. And I know for a fact on the other side, she was laughing her tail off just as much as I was, because I think your grandfather, your grandparents were just as happy to see you receive that card that you were just as happy to get it yourself here in the physical. And so it really is like tuning into a radio station. If we're constantly listening to FM radio, but grandma and grandpa are listening to AM, we got to switch the station. We have to tune in to them, right? Or they have to tune into us, but it's better for us to tune into them because they're there and they're ready and willing to communicate with us. We just have to be open to, like you talked about, all the different ways they can communicate. So I do encourage people write down ways that you want them to communicate, because there's tons of ways they can communicate with us. But if there's, if you were really into butterflies or dragonflies or feathers or whatever it may be, write it down and say, I want you to communicate with me this way, and write it down.
I love that.
Yes. And then say it before your dreams, say it before you go to bed, and really start training your subconscious, to be able to open yourself up to receiving that information.
I agree with you 100% with that. And I love the point you made, because I had some dragonflies swarming outside my place in like March or April when I was really in contemplative mode. What am I doing next? And I realized that it's just, hey, chill out, Jason. Things are going to work out for you. Don't overthink. You'll be fine. And that's what that was for how I received that. So the fact that you had a swarm of ladybugs, which I didn't know they could swarm. Yeah. It was like your grandmother saying, you wanted one, I'll send you a lot more than that.
Oh, she sent me one dead one first, like a joke. Then she sent me 10, and then she sent me thousands. It was like she was leading up to it, because I think she saw how excited I was getting.
And she's like, I got good at this.
I'm getting really good at manifesting. Then here's the kicker. I said, Grandma, all right, I'm sick and tired of ladybugs. I mean, you swarmed me for the past hour with ladybugs. I want to see some dragonflies. Well, we walked for maybe another 20 or 25 minutes. And when we got back to the car, we had about 20 dragonflies just circle around us. So it was almost like she was like, all right, I'll show you on here. I can communicate. And I was just laughing and giggling. I couldn't get home. I couldn't wait to get home to call my parents and tell them, and my sister. And my sister had some visitations that day. This was the day of her death 2 years ago. And so your day was September 26th. My day was September 27th. And so she had passed on that day, but she was communicating with me and my sister. And my dad was like, well, she's not communicating with me. And me and my sister were like, well, are you open to receiving that.
I think it's interesting when people are like, well, no one talks to me, therefore there's no spirituality. People are dead and they stay that way. And I'm like, how could you live with that kind of a life concept? You really are limiting yourself. Like if you're thinking that we're just going to live here and that's all we've got, then that really is not something to be happy about.
And there's so much magic out there. It's just, we've got to pay more
tap into it.
Yeah. And tune into it. So Jason, this has been such a fun conversation. I love talking to you. I love all of the really cool stuff we talked about. So what are some ways that people can connect with you? How can they reach out to you? I know you're doing readings on Saturdays, but how can people reach out to you if they want to get a reading?
Thank you so much, by the way. I appreciate that. I am on social media, The Social Psychic on Instagram. I use Instagram a lot because it's just something I'm comfortable using. And so they can find me on Instagram with _social_psychic. My website is thesocialpsychic.com. You can also 833-JASON-ZUK is a toll-free number, and 813-586-3933 I think is a local number here in Tampa. I think that's the number if I'm right. But yeah, any way that somebody would like to reach out to me, and even though I'm limiting the times of how I can do readings, I'm always open to talk to people. I have a lot of clients from my past that keep in touch with me and I've developed strong friendships with, and it's just such a blessing to be able to be on your show today and sharing these ideas. I love the fact that you were in healthcare and now you're intuitive, and it's like you can show everybody, no matter what you do for your job, it has nothing to do with your intuitive abilities.
No. And I'm a firm believer we are all intuitive. It's just learning to develop. It's like playing a sport or learning how to play the violin. It's really just remembering that we're intuitive.
Practice.
And practicing it. Yeah. And developing those abilities. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jason. I appreciate you coming on the show. For those of you listeners, check out Jason's podcast, The Social Psychic Radio Show. Jason, thank you for being you. Thank you for coming forward and being vulnerable today and sharing your story of how you, woke up to your intuitive abilities. And it's really nice to see men out there starting to come forward. I'm actually jumping on a show after this to go on with another guy who woke up about a year ago, and now he's seeing elementals and all of these other wild and crazy things. So his story in itself is really neat. But I love to be able to share, how we are all waking up in our own unique ways and how we all have these own unique abilities. So thanks, Jason, for putting that energy out.
I just had one last thing I forgot to mention earlier is with my producers or Electrocast Media, Megan Kane and I, we have our new show coming out, Psychic Visions, at some point in the very near future. I look forward to everyone checking that out. Add us on Instagram, Psychic Visions Podcast on Instagram with the handle. And then the other thing is anyone who's a podcaster who delves into spiritual, who delves into paranormal, we have something called the Paranormal Universe we're creating. It's a network for podcasters to monetize their show, have larger, it's a safe place. So anyone who's a psychic podcaster, intuitive, anything like that, reach out to me, because at some point in 2023 we'll be launching that as well. And
I will probably be one of the ones jumping on.
I would love that. That's why I'm bringing it up to you.
Yes. And I know a lot of my guests, we talk about a lot of these out of the matrix, out of the box, so to speak, concepts. And I love that you're starting a platform for that, because I love the platform that we're on now. I'm not going to mention it, but I love the platform that we're on. But I do feel like there's so much growth in the spiritual community. So thank you for mentioning that. And thanks again for your time and for your energy, Jason.
I appreciate you, Tanya. Thank you so much. And thank you to your audience.
You deserve to navigate your life as an empath in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.thesoulcafe.org.